Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to our European attendees. Thanks for joining today's webinar, From Proofing to Production, sponsored by Ziflow. Before we get started, we have just a few housekeeping items I'd like to go over. Today's presentation is being recorded, and we will be sending out a link after today's webinar with a recording link and a link to the slides as well. Also, all attendee lines are muted, and that's just to cut down on background noise, mostly from my co-presenter's dog. But we do want this to be interactive, so please use the Q&A function in the webinar interface. We'll plan to take them at the end of the call, but if I'm able to catch them as they come in, we may take them during the call as well. All right, with that, let's get this party started. Real quick, I wanted to introduce our presenters today. My name is Mike Peterbaugh, and I'm the CMO here at Ziflow. And I'm joined today by Will Liu, our VP of Ops.
Hi, everyone. Excited to have everyone on the webinar.
Thanks for joining, Will. Our background and experience, if you look at our bios really quickly on the slide, it's pretty indicative of Ziflow at large. Ziflow has got a deep understanding of the review and approval challenges that creative marketers face every day. We're solely focused on the online proofing market and delivering value as part of your overall MarTech strategy. I don't think there's a company with more expertise around the online proofing and review and approval challenges as Ziflow. So you're in good hands today. Let's move on to the next slide. Oops. So if you've joined, what are we here to talk about today? Today, we're going to cover online proofing best practices for video production. Video, as we're all surely aware of, is a driving force behind many of today's campaign strategies, and it's become a priority. And with this priority also comes the opportunity to scrutinize how videos are being produced, specifically as part of the review and approval process. And that's what we're going to discuss here today. If you've joined one of our webinars before, you know that we typically like to look at a use case as a way of providing context to the challenge. In this instance, we're going to consider what the process would look like to review and approve a simple explainer video. And we're going to talk about a simpler explainer video, but this could also apply to a larger, video, television commercial, corporate video. I think really the process applies and the same ideas apply, regardless of the length of the video. So I'm going to walk through a high-level view of the process, and then a little bit later, I'm going to turn it over to Will, and we'll jump into Ziflow and show you how our customers are tackling video projects. So first things first, the creative brief kicks off the project. Once it's been developed and delivered, now what? Oftentimes, there's kind of a fire and forget scenario where it's sent out to key stakeholders, but maybe not all that need to see it. So a lot of times it's left in the hands of the stakeholders to distribute it to the team that will actually be executing on the project. Distribution is a key item to consider here, as is tactically where the brief will live during the course of the project, because it does often need to be referred back to. This is something that Will's going to be covering in just a moment when we jump into the product. So once the brief has been reviewed, a rough cut of the video will be produced and the real fun begins. The time here varies, especially considering the desired runtime of the finished product. But let's fast forward to when the first cut is ready. And this is where the real fun begins. It's time to figure out how the video will be shared. Are you going to use file shares, maybe even something like Vimeo? If simply sharing native files like raw video files, one thing to consider is, does everyone who needs to have the right apps installed to review it have those apps? Are we going to, turn into a situation where maybe some stakeholders or just team members are, left to kind of figure out how to get access to the video itself? Once you solve those tactical challenges, I should say, the new challenge is how to best deal with the collection of feedback. And considering the cost of video production and video editors themselves, it's probably least effective from a cost basis anyway to have a video editor waiting through email threads looking for feedback. And that's another thing that we'll talk about when we get into the actual demonstration. So each review round is going to trigger any number of changes. And this could go on for another 2, 3, or 4 versions of the video. This is a vast oversimplification of the process. I get it, but an effective workflow here is key to ensuring that your process doesn't get bogged down, or worse, you overlook and miss a key group or stakeholder that needs to see the video project as part of the sign-off project. And the sign-off project, it's a nice segue into the next slide, is final cut and approval. This is where key stakeholders provide approval or withhold it, depending on the decision. So like I said, this was kind of a quick journey of a typical review process for a video. At this point, a few of you are probably thinking, well, this looks pretty standard. I mean, this could be for a video project or simply a web page, ready for review. And I don't disagree with you, which is why I wanted to now invite Will, and this is why I wanted Will to be on the webinar today, is to demonstrate that the video review and approval process can be closely aligned with your corporate standard review process to ensure compliance and alignment with like your company or agency guidelines. That's the process. What Will is going to walk us through is some of the nuances to consider with video when it comes to review and approval. Given the dynamic nature of video content, there's several areas to consider. And with that, I'm going to turn the phone over to Will. I'm going to stop sharing very quickly so that Will can grab the screen. Go ahead, Will.
I'm going to go ahead and start sharing my screen now. Now, a couple of key things. Sorry, just fumbling with the share button here. Let's try the scan. Sharing my screen.
Looks great.
Now, perfect. A couple of key things is how do you get the video file or how do you get the brief? Now, there's a couple of different ways to handle that process, especially when you think about your creative review process. Briefing is a very interesting concept. So taking it back to the very beginning of the project initiation, there's really two ways that we see the brief process kick off. If you've attended one of our earlier webinars, we've talked about the briefing process and how you can use intake forms to build out things like your design agency brief. What's great about this is you can build out and customize these forms however you want to really capture the brief. This will actually create your brief as what we call proof. This keeps a running file of, this keeps a running history of your brief throughout the entire project. So from project initiation from this brief, all of this can be associated with the proof itself as the very first version. So depending on what your briefing process is, do you have a formal brief that you're asking either the account managers, the production team, or the clients to fill out? This is a great way for them to capture, fill in the brief, and now you have a running log. We've seen from several of our clients, this is a great way for them to kick off their initiation process. Some of our other clients, you already have a fully built out briefing system and you already have a briefing process. So it doesn't make sense to incorporate that briefing process into your overall review and approval workflow. So that's absolutely fine as well. There's going to be two contexts here. So just want to talk through very quickly about how you can build out the brief for submission. These can be really rich in detail. You can have people fill in information, select options, so you can build your entire project brief directly within the intake form for submission. The other typical example is the briefing process lives outside. Your clients are filling out a Word document, they're filling out a PDF for you. You're taking that and you're generating the first cut of the video asset that they've asked you to create. Now the big question is always, how do you get that asset from them? Some scenarios we've seen are things such as they've been emailed over, they've been FTP'd over, they've been uploaded on a USB drive and dropped off on someone's desk. What we found is that adds a lot of time and friction to the process, just waiting for assets to be picked up once the studio or the production team has created it. So taking the same concept of the intake form, you can extend this logic directly to your studio and your production teams once they've actually finished generating the video for you. So what we've seen often is if you already have a briefing process and you're not using the design agency brief, absolutely fine. But one thing that I highly recommend to cut time in the process is building something like a studio intake form. This can be a form shared with your studio team, your production team, As they finish creating the first cut, they can take this and upload it. Now they no longer have to put in a shared storage array, try to email it over to you, send it via FTP, or give you a flash drive with it, which can be missed or cause delays. Once the asset's ready, they can simply go to the studio intake form and upload it. A couple of nuances that we can talk about with the studio intake form is how do you determine who it gets sent to, where it gets sent to, things like that. But what you'll be able to do is you can really trigger, you can build all of those directly in, as we've talked, you can build all those directly into the pathing, which we'll talk about in a second here. But a couple of key things is we have this form. This form can capture whatever information you want. If we imagine that I'm from the studio team, I finished the first draft of the video or the first cut of the video, I can come in and simply submit it here. I can upload my video. I can provide additional metadata if I want, such as selecting what I'm submitting. So this is a video, and this is our 60-second explainer video. And once we filled it out, once we've dragged our file, we can hit submit. And now what's going to happen in the background is this file is going to be automatically submitted into Ziflow for processing. So this eliminates the step of you sending the file to a project manager or a traffic controller from Studio. This automatically kicks off that proofing process. So if I was to very quickly toggle back into Ziflow, I can see that the video has started processing and is waiting for me there. This helps eliminate the lag time where Studio has uploaded into the FTP, for instance, and then the traffic has to pick it up. Now we go automatically from first cut video production to proof creation with things such as workflows that can be automatically applied. So some of the nuances that you can build on your video production process is when your studio submits the video, what does it go to? Who does it go to? Who gets notified of this? And what route or path it should take. So these forms, these intake forms from studios can actually be tied specifically to a workflow, so the routes and things of that nature are automatically predefined. We did a pretty comprehensive webinar on workflows a couple months back or a few months ago, but just to quickly recap, you can build all of this directly from intake. So I submitted this video from the form, video gets automatically generated as a proof, and a workflow route gets automatically applied to it, which means that it knows which reviewers to send it to, what the role of each reviewer is, should they have comments rights, should they have decisions, what their deadlines may be, and also what determines what will continue to move it along the route. So here we can see that we have a couple of different stages here. We have creative, we have legal, we have consultant, and we have also automatically determined what moves it from stage to stage. So what moves it from creative review to legal and compliance review, pre-built into our workflow, is when the creative review team has approved it or approved it with changes. Again, you can customize these based off of your form, and you can customize these based off of your workflow, but this is a great way to streamline really what we've seen as one of the largest time inefficiencies of video proofing. It's just getting it from studio to the right reviewer's hand so that they can take a look at it. Taking it from there, let's actually go ahead and take a look at the proof creation process. Let's go take a look at the proof now that's been created. So we have our video file, and I can go ahead and open that proof directly in the browser for me. Couple of key things to point out here is I don't need to download the file. It's all going to load directly in my browser and stream directly in the browser for me, just like I would play any other video that I'm streaming here. So I can play this video, I can stop this video, I can jump ahead in this video to any point in time as well. So this is extraordinarily helpful, especially with large video files. If you have video files that are upwards of 1 gig, 5 gigs, 10 gigs, whatever they may be, now you don't need to download that video before you can preview them. You can stream it directly within Ziflow in your browser. And it's going to be platform agnostic. You don't need to worry about, am I cutting a MOV file and sending it to someone on Windows who may not be able to play it? These are going to be agnostic to your operating system because you're playing it directly in your browser. Now, for your video review processes, a couple of really key video specific things that I do want to point out. Within Ziflow, we support the concept of frame precise commenting. What I mean by that is as you're playing the videos, as you're stopping the videos, you can see the time here. We're about 2 seconds and 100 milliseconds in. Well, one of the key things that we found is as you're communicating with clients, studio, account teams about edits that need to be made on videos, people look at them in different ways. Some may want to view it in a time format because they talk about 2 seconds into the video or 2.1 seconds into the video. For your studio teams, it may be more helpful to talk about the video in timecode, which is going to be the timestamp and the frame within that specific second, or just raw frames itself. So how many frames exist for the video. So you'll be able to control your formatting as I'm going through the video. So if someone wanted me to take a look at the 161st frame, I can jump to that frame. Or I can use these forward and back keys here to move the video frame by frame. This is extraordinarily helpful as you're trying to make a frame precise comment. A couple of additional things that you can do with the formatting, I'll point out after we go ahead and add our first comment. But just really want to show you the power of just adjusting the formatting and knowing which mode or which format you want to talk about the video in. Are you talking about it in time? Are you talking about it with time code? Or are you talking about it with frames? I think the key and important thing to point out is going to be the fidelity of the video itself, though, especially as we're talking about frames. We're going to maintain the fidelity of the video. So if you have a ProRes video that's cut at 300 frames per second, it'll play back at 300 frames per second. So if it's an ultra high def, you'll still be able to play those directly within Ziflow as well and comment them with frame precise comments. Now with your videos, like I said, you can play them, you can stop them. At any time, you'll be able to add your comment on a specific frame within the video. So here, if I want to make a comment on the video, I can mark up and annotate directly on the video itself. Again, this is really helpful because now you're making a comment on a specific frame. So as I'm making my comment, I can see on my comment box, it's going to be made on the 186th frame. As I adjust my formatting, I can actually switch it and it'll change in the comment box as well. So if I want to know what time this comment's going to be made on, or if I want to know what time code this comment's going to be made on, I can adjust this formatting and it's going to reflect automatically in this comment box for me. So as I'm toggling between the two, it's extraordinarily easy. Because this is a video though, what you're going to be able to do is you can do a range-based comment as well. So for instance, if I wanted to change this plant, and this plant persists, let me go ahead and add this comment here. Let's change this different plant. It's obstructing. Now, because this plant ranges across multiple frames or multiple time for the video, I can actually build a range-based comment. As you can see, as I'm pulling my comment across times and frames, the video is scrubbing and playing. So now I can actually capture it. It ends right about there. So I can stop it right there. And now if we take a look again at below the comment, the time code captures it. So now we're making extraordinarily precise comments on the frame level or down to the millisecond onto the video itself. So here, I'm going to add a comment here, can continue to play the video and stop the video. Important reference tool for teams though is now in the timeline, you can see comments have been made. If you select on the comment itself, it'll tell you what range this comment spans as well. And as I'm going through the video, my comment's going to persist there as well. So this is extraordinarily helpful for other reviewers that are previewing my video, because now as they play the video, they'll be able to see where I've commented on the video itself. A couple of additional really key features. A trend that we've noticed is outputting the video into multiple aspect ratios, especially with the prevalence of social videos nowadays. You may be cutting a video for a 16:9 aspect ratio because you're going to, it's a TV ad, it's a spot that you're going to generate. but you're going to want that video to exist across multiple medium types now. Now you're just not just creating videos for TV, or you're not just creating videos for digital, you're creating the videos for things like social. So a couple of key things to really consider is what's going to get cut off on your video, especially as you're outputting the same video into different aspect ratios. One of the concepts that we brought in for video review is the concept of safe zones. So you have your traditional action safe and title safe areas. So if you want to see, this is a 16:9 video. If I want to see what my action safe and title safe areas, let me actually jump to the end. If I want to see what the action safe and title safe areas of this video are, I can apply that safe zone for 16:9, and now I know what falls into which safe zone. But if this is also a video that we're going to output into social, for instance, where we need a 1x1 video, what you can do is you can select that and you can mask the areas that would get cut off. So here, as we output this video to different aspect ratios, you can actually mask the areas that be removed. This is helpful, and we've seen this really speed up the video production and video review process, because now you don't need to generate multiple videos with multiple aspect ratios. So your studio team doesn't need to create you a 16:9, a 4:3, a 9:16, a 1:1. They can create that one video as a low res for you for this first cut, and you can use the safe zones and the mask to figure out what that video can look like on different aspect ratios and device types. What's great here is as I navigate through the video, I play it, I stop it, I add comments to it, all this is still going to persist as well. So here, for example, if we jump to this frame, I can see that a lot of the video gets cut off, and this won't be a good output for 1:1 social, and I can add a comment related to that fact. So a couple of really key tools for video production and limiting the types or amounts of videos that you need to prove, because you can do it all from one video by applying things such as the safe zones. Another core element is,
sorry, just to jump in real quick, I think I want to just highlight a point you talked about. It's so important with regards to, and you made the comment earlier about precision feedback, and it's not just about circling the plan itself, but the range-based comments and being able to show also what aspect ratio at the same time is such an important piece of the concept of precision feedback, which is something we talk a lot about every day at Ziflow, just in regular, review and approval processes. But I think with video, and you hit the hammer on the head, or the nail on the head with the hammer, is it can really help cut down on versions and the back and forth as well during the process.
Absolutely, and this is where we see a majority of time savings, especially for account teams and production teams as well. For the production side, limiting the amount of outputs that they're creating. For the account teams, it's easier to capture feedback, and it's easier to know what they're looking at, especially with things like the safe zones and the precise commenting. And then just a couple other key elements I think have become extraordinarily helpful is things such as playback speed. So you can actually control the playback speed of your video here. And a couple of core things about why that's important is you may have extraordinarily long video, and being able to speed up the playback speed is critical. Or this could be a video that, again, you're outputting for social, which has become such a prevalent video type that you may want to slow down the playback speed to make sure you're really getting in there and getting that fine detail, because you're cutting a 6-second video. So playback speed is one of those key elements that I always point out, where you may want to adjust the playback speed if it's a short video, or speed it up if it's a long video. But again, this is very quick for you to adjust, and it's something that you don't need to take out of the proofing system, load it up into a different system. You can do all this within one location, which becomes critical as well. So you don't need to put it into a separate video player here to control things such as the playback speeds. Now, a couple of key elements is just going to be things like how you mark up and annotate. We've covered this in multiple webinars to begin with, but just want to very quickly show that you can have several markup and annotation tools that you can do You can do things such as draw boxes, circles, arrows, lines. You can freehand your annotations, control the color of your annotations, control the zoom level of your videos as well. So here we're viewing my video at 100% zoom. This is a low res video, but I can zoom in, I can zoom out of that video as well, which really is helpful, especially as I want to jump into some of the finer details of my commenting. This is a video, so sometimes you're going to want to see it on a darker background. It just creates the contrast that's helpful to you. So the ability to toggle between a light and dark background, I found really beneficial, especially as I've done some video review I've done some video review. So the ability to just toggle whether the video is on a darker background or a lighter background becomes extraordinarily helpful as well. And then, as Mike mentioned, it's a video. The time it takes to go from beginning to end is going to vary. How long it's going to take you to comment on it, how many rounds of revision you're going to make on it, all of that is going to definitely vary depending on the length and the complexity of your video. But you can add your comments to the video, have these precise to the time or the frame, and then you can do things such as submit decisions on your video as well. So it's the markup and annotation capability combined with the workflow that becomes extraordinarily powerful and productive. One of the greatest things that we found, one of the best things that we've seen is the ability to loop this back to the studio team. So now that I've added a comment, I've said changes are required, studio production team can take that feedback, they can incorporate those changes. Once they've created a new version, a new cut of that, circling back to that intake form, studio intake form that we talked about earlier, they can actually version on top of that directly themselves. This is a game changer. This is really a game changer that I've seen, because now studio is submitting new versions, or they're creating, or they're incorporating your changes. They can version themselves on that. So they can simply select to create a new version, pick the video that they've submitted initially for that first cut, and upload a brand new version and have the versioning all take place in the background. But here they are versioning themselves off of that intake form. Again, that eliminates the step of them getting that video to the right person to generate the proof. And it's also going to eliminate that step of now the person that receives it has to find the existing one, version it. This really makes it helpful because they can establish that own versioning themselves as they make that submission. Again, once you upload it, you can hit submit. It's got to kick into the system. And now I'm going to have a video for review. Key thing that I want to point out, just kind of jumping into a video that I already have, is with your videos, you'll also be able to, and this is one of the huge benefits of online proofing, especially for video production, is with videos, once you have multiple versions, you can do comparisons on your versions as well. Now here I have version 2 on the left, version 1 on the right. They're in locked comparison mode, which means as I move one video on the timeline, it's going to move the other video on the timeline. So these videos are going to jump with each other, especially as you click through to the commenting. This makes it extraordinarily helpful to see if I added a comment and whether those comments were changed. So now your video comparisons become a really critical tool. A couple of key points that I always like to make, especially as we talk about video comparisons, is you're not solely restricted to comparing videos with videos. As Mike mentioned earlier, keeping the brief with the videos become really helpful, especially as you get deeper into it, to make sure that you don't lose sight of the initial project scope. So if you have the brief uploaded as well, you can actually compare the videos with completely, I'm not set up for that. You can actually compare the videos with completely different assets. So if I wanted to, actually let me go ahead and show everyone what that experience could look like. If I wanted to compare a video with the brief itself, as long as I'm storing them in the correct location, you'll be able to compare something such as a video file with a script, with a storyboard, with a brief, and have all of this tracked together. So I can do that by versioning them together, start with the brief, move on to my storyboard, move on to the script, and have them all versioned together. Or I can review them as completely different assets, but still have the ability to compare them with each other. This way, you never lose track of what you're working on here. So here I can actually have, let's imagine that this is a storyboard or the brief and the video side by side. So now as I'm going through the video, as I'm reviewing the video, I'll have the brief available to me so I can access it, or the storyboard or a different version of the video. This is where comparison becomes really critical because it allows you to compare not just with different videos or different versions of the videos, you can actually compare with different elements of the video itself, such as you've built out the brief, the storyboards, or the scripting.
For those of you who've been using online proofing for quite some time, I think everyone will really welcome this capability. Will and I have been in this market for quite some time, and many years ago at a previous company, one of the ways that people would get around this is, as Will mentioned, either attaching the brief to a comment and accessing it that way across versions, or, as Will mentioned, making it the V1 and then being able to bring it up alongside the actual piece of creative. But being able to do it both as, maybe if you've included it as a version, but also as part of, the project folder itself is really, it's just a super powerful feature that once you get comfortable with it, you'll never not use it ever again.
And I think that's everything I want to cover in a real world example, Mike. So I think that's everything I want to show around video reviewing at the moment.
Great, thanks, Will. I'm going to go ahead and take back control and just cover a few more slides. What I really wanted to do is just really quickly reiterate some of the things that you talked about. As I mentioned, today's session is being recorded, and we will send out a copy of the slides as well. But just a few things that Will covered during his real-world walkthrough about some of the nuances. With regards to intake forms, it's all about kicking off projects the right way. This is really instrumental in cutting down the lag from project kickoff to notification of team members. It can definitely be customized to your business workflow and streamline how you work with your customers. Another key area that we talked about was the workflow approach to review and approval. This is, again, going to drive consistency and ensure the right people are included each time. It can be administered both sequentially and in parallel for even more efficiency. And it's also best paired with intake forms to initiate projects for specific teams. I think that's one of the aspects that we should definitely highlight as well. Upload speeds and buffering technology, we didn't really talk about that as much as we showed it, but we didn't really speak to it. I'm hoping that everyone took notice of how quickly we were able to upload and process that 60-second explainer video. This sounds pretty obvious, right? I mean, you should be able to upload and get project kickoff going pretty quickly. But you would be surprised at how many other applications, or I would say apps that are focused around video usage and review haven't really solved this piece of the puzzle. So what was a really strong belief of ours that video upload and processing speeds must allow for like the near instant sharing and review initiation. Project kickoff, as we talked about at the very beginning of the call today, I think the stat was something over 80% of marketers are using video now as a main marketing channel. That means that video needs to be produced faster than ever. So one thing that we would suggest is, look for solutions with that infrastructure capability to enable, instant project access, and actually I saw a couple of questions come in about that, and we'll address those in the Q&A. And last but not least, before we get into Q&A, one thing I think that Will did an amazing job of, and I want to thank him again for taking the time out to join us today, are video-specific review and approval features. These are the nuances that Will talked about. Some of them are, again, the safe zone overlay for render assurance for the different aspect ratios. We did talk about it, and I kind of, interrupted Will at one point to talk about it even more. It's around also the precise commenting capabilities, and this is definitely a nuance around video. Range-based commenting that Will demonstrated, as well as frame accurate and timestamp comments. This is absolutely, key for a video production process. if you can imagine a video editor, culling through tons of email threads, looking for the comment about where to remove the plant, and trying to sync up, whatever app that reviewer was using as far as frame rate and play time, depending on what type of app they use versus what was actually on the video. That can be a huge and horrible time sink. So the ability to provide precise commenting is just key here. Also, playback speed management. Something we didn't talk about, but we do have a couple of questions on as well, is codec support. So we're going to talk about that during the Q&A, but you definitely want to look for a solution that allows you to review and approve all kinds of videos in a single app. And really, this is going to cut down on the back and forth of really what we call like kind of the management of the process, getting reviewers up and running, trying to hound people for feedback, or trying to assist them to make sure they have the right and proper app to review a video. All of that is basically a moot point when it comes to something like Ziflow, but it has a pretty broad and expansive codec support. And then last but not least, compare mode, which at the end of the day is originally designed to compare two versions of videos together, to be able to demonstrate changes, to be able to confirm changes were made, look at before and afters. But as Will showed, there's also an awesome secondary use case for that, which is also aligning assets that were intended to be either instructive or included in particular campaigns to see that they were followed and used as reference points, which is pretty awesome. So with that, I think we've made it to Q&A. I am going to go ahead and just open up the Q&A box really quickly. Give me 1 second here. We did have a bunch of questions come in today, so thank you very much, and I appreciate everyone's attendance thus far. I think the first question was somewhat answered live, which is how quickly can projects get started? And I think, again, one thing that I would say about Ziflow is that we definitely have invested in the infrastructure, the technology around file upload and processing. We've extended our infrastructure capabilities quite extensively in the last year or so around that regard. And as we saw during the demonstration, that 60-second video was uploaded, processing, and done before Will actually got done explaining how the process really worked. Will, I don't know if there's anything you want to add to that.
No, I think that's kind of a key point to cover. It's just the speed in which the things get uploaded, as well as the speed in which the videos get processed, really cut off time, and then it's just the handoff time gets eliminated as well. So there's multiple time savings here, and the handoff process gets eliminated, just the overall processing speed and upload speed of the videos themselves. And then once it gets to your reviewers, your clients, your internal teams, eliminating the need to download the videos is a really huge time saver here as well.
Yeah, and actually that's the next, there's actually a bunch of questions, which I think I could probably combine into 2 questions here. There's a couple of different questions around, do I need, or is there a specific video player that Ziflow works with? And do videos need to be of a specific file format? And I think that's also another, kind of great force multiplier, if you will, around a solution like Ziflow. Ziflow effectively becomes an abstraction layer between you and the video itself. Because of our wide codec and file and media support, you don't need a separate app. You don't need a separate proof viewer for video. The same proof viewer that you would, as Will demonstrated, the same proof viewer you would use for PDF and image review, when he demonstrated in side-by-side compare, is the same proof viewer you're going to use for video. Just the controls are different, for play and playback and the masking, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that's also, something definitely important to point out, is that there is no additional, app to install, viewer. You don't necessarily need to put the burden on your reviewers to go find a codec, or heaven forbid, go and bother IT for that kind of thing. It's all encapsulated within Ziflow. Let's see, what else do we have in here? Actually, Will, one thing that we didn't necessarily talk about too much is, our ability to actually automate the transcoding of video. So we have a question here, is actually, I'm guessing, from a customer about video transcoding using our Zybot. So I'll address it, and Will, if I leave anything out, please jump in. One of the questions we had was about handling transcoding of video. We actually do have in Ziflow an automation capability that will allow you to transcode upscale, downscale videos for your certain use case. So from 1080 to 480 or vice versa, and we can actually help automate that if that's how you either want to review the video itself, or once the video has been produced, you can also transcode the video as well as a finished product. So yeah, that is definitely something that we can assist with as part of the application. And I think that's it, actually, for questions. 41 minutes, not bad. Get everyone back about 20 minutes of their day. I want to, for Will, on behalf of me and Will, I want to thank you all for attending today's webinar. If you'd like to check out, if you're not already checking out Ziflow, you can go to ziflow.com and click on the Get a Free Trial button. We have a free 14-day trial. It'll allow you to review and approve video, static files, web pages, even HTML5 banner ads, if that's what your interest is. If you have any questions, one of our colleagues will be reaching out later today with a copy of the recording. So please feel free to engage with our colleague on any questions that you may have. And if they're specific to today's webinar, he or she will route them directly to Will or I. With that, I want to thank everyone again, and have a nice day, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.